Good afternoon. Welcome to the Higher Ground Calvary Chapel's School of Ministry. We have not done the School of Ministry programs live for some time. This one is our first one, I think, in about a year and a half. And the School of Ministry is a special program designed for those that might be considering going into the ministry, or it's also for those that want more in-depth detail about a specific topic. So nobody's going to be coming to you after class and saying, oh, which ministry are you going to be in charge of? You're safe. No panic, don't worry. But I was trying to find the best place to plug this in, and it doesn't fit into our In Search of Jesus program, and the only other program they have is the School of Ministry. So the School of Ministry is designed for classes from 4 to 12 weeks, and we cover things such as the cults. We cover spiritual warfare. We have other things about individual books like the book of Job. And so we have a very wide variety of topics we do. Now, if you're interested, home audience included, on our website, there is a little tab at the top, and it's called Ministries. If you click on that tab, Ministries, it drops down, and it has In Search of Jesus, which is our early morning program. We started in the book of Genesis, and we are going from Genesis, I was saying probably through to the end of the Bible. I'm not going to live that long, I can tell you that. So I'm thinking probably if we can get through the Torah, the first 5 books, that's where it's really the meat is there. And the In Search of Jesus program is designed to identify pictures and prophecies of Jesus. We started about a year and a half ago, and it was a very interesting first lesson. We looked at the very first word in the Bible, and in the Hebrew Bible that was the word Breshit, and it just means beginnings. No big deal. Until we discovered Bible codes. And there are several Bible codes, and this one we're talking about is called the Paleo-Hebrew. Before they went into the captivity in Babylon, the Hebrew alphabet had different letters. They had the same letters, same names, but they were different letters back then, and they were pictographs. So for example, the first letter in the Hebrew was Aleph, and instead of the little letter, back then it was an ox head, representing power and authority. And the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet is Bet, and Bet looked like a little tent, so it represents the home. If you take the Aleph Bet, Bet Aleph, you get Abba, and it literally means the head of the home or father. And so you could learn to read Hebrew in the Paleo, not even knowing what the word means, but by the pictures. And so we were looking at Breshit in the Paleo-Hebrew. And literally it means God's Son work complete when he is destroyed on the cross. That is the first word in the Hebrew Bible. And all of a sudden, like, wow, there are pictures of Jesus we don't even know about. And the fun one is the word Yahweh. YHWH, where the H is the Hebrew word letter Hey. Ha, ha. And the Hey is a little picture of a man with his hands up, saying, behold. And then the Yod is a picture of the hand. And the Vav is the picture of a nail. So the name of God, Yahweh, literally means, behold the hand, behold the nail. So there is stuff there that I am still finding out about. So it just kind of blows me away. So the In Search of Jesus program, it's all there. And we are looking for pictures of Jesus starting in the first word of the Bible going through. So today we're going to be doing something called Is Genesis History? So let's open in prayer if we can. Heavenly Father, just thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this group of people that are so interested in this topic. Father, I ask that you would set me aside, drain me of myself, and let your Holy Spirit step in and fill me, Father. Let me be able to minister to the needs and to teach and to open eyes and to draw people to recognize that this is not just a blind faith. This is a faith that is based upon evidence and information and logic, and that we are not an ignorant people, Father, but we are actually an educated people that know your word. Now lead us and guide us, bind the powers of the enemy, and use us for your honor and glory. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so is Genesis history? Wow, class number 1. I think we're on class number 6 in Search of Jesus, a year and a half to get through 6th grade. And today's topic is Mount St. Helens. And I love this subtitle that God gave me, The Eruption That Shook the World. We're not talking about just the physical world. This has shaken the archaeological and the geological and the scientific world. This thing has messed up so many theories. It's just fun to come back and look at them. So, as a church, a few weeks ago, we did a documentary entitled, Is Genesis History? And this is what it looks like. They have it in a book format, they have it in a DVD format, even in a Blu-ray format. And we introduced this to the church. Now, apparently we forgot to make a few comments. The first comment is that this is a documentary. So people are coming looking for like a fun story and a plot and actors, and we're watching it as a documentary. And documentaries can get kind of dry and kind of boring, and we forgot to bring the popcorn. You never do something without giving the popcorn. You got to have the popcorn for something like this. So, it's a documentary, and it's asking the single question: did the events recorded in the book of Genesis actually happen? And Neil was talking this morning about people putting things up on billboards and, Jesus is not God and things like that. The topic of creation versus evolution has been a battle that has been with us since forever. We can actually go back to the book of Psalms. And David, in the book of Psalms, made a very powerful statement. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. Psalm 100. And the whole idea is that it is He who made us. That is creation. And not we ourselves. That's evolution. So even though David had never heard of Darwin, 1,000 years before Jesus, he was addressing the issue that we're addressing today. How did we get here? So, there's a concept that basically says, if something happened, then the event must have left some type of evidence behind. I'm a big fan of murder mysteries and things like that. And Sherlock Holmes has always been my favorite character. And Sherlock Holmes always goes with the idea that there has to be some proof. And I love how he puts this, that when you have removed every possible conclusion, whatever is left, no matter how improbable, is probably what happened. So, we're going to do kind of that in this class. We're going to look at the different things that the scientists have been telling us. And we're going to say, is this possible? Does this make sense? Is there evidence? And if there's not, we're going to take it away. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. When we get rid of all the other stuff, what is left, which seems so improbable to the world, is that 1, there is a God, and 2, He made us. And so, this is not blind faith. And that's where we run into problems. That, I've got to accept this on blind faith. For those who have been in my class, they'll let you know I am terrible at faith. I don't like doing things on faith. I like doing things based on solid evidence. And so when we get into our different classes and we're discussing things, I'm pointing out, this is logic. This is evidence. This is what has the greatest probability of being true. And so I don't walk by faith as much as I should. God's probably going to make me walk by faith now since I said that. But I want you to believe, and I want you to have your faith, but I want you to know that your faith is not based on ignorance. It's based on solid evidence that we can point to. So, the basis of this documentary was, did this really happen? Now, unfortunately, the documentary kind of jumped in the middle and assumed that we knew certain things. And as a result, when we got done, people were walking out of the class saying, I don't get it. And I was Davida. Davida walked out that night and she says, I bet you Dennis gets this. And I'm like, oh, great. And so the next staff meeting, everybody's saying, yeah, people didn't understand it. They didn't get it. They don't know what it's about. And everybody's kind of looking at me. And that's a terrifying thing. They say something and then look at me. And I've tried on previous occasions to say, oh, no, that's not me. No, God's not calling me. And I've learned over all these years that when they say something and look at me, it's like, I better get the program together and start writing. So this is why we are now having this class. And again, as I mentioned, I'm very laid back. If you need to get some more food, sorry, home audience, we have food. You have to get your own snacks. You can help yourself to the food. If you need to take a bathroom break, go ahead and take a bathroom break. If I'm saying something that you don't understand or something is not making sense, please, pop the hand up and let's talk about it before we go past that point. If it's on your mind now, this is the time to ask the questions and work on that. So it's the age-old question of creation versus evolution. Whew. This makes me feel really old. I mean, this is what, 40 years short of being 100 years? A century? This was back in the last century. It was back in the last millennium. I was in elementary school. And I was in third grade, and this was back when we lived in Baltimore, Maryland. And so back then, they had just blocked the prayer in school. Madeline Murray O'Hare, she brought the lawsuit. I was alive back then. They got rid of the prayer in school, and they got rid of the Bible. And I remember coming into the elementary school classes, and every morning we would do the Pledge of Allegiance, and we would do the Lord's Prayer. Right. And I think they had some Bible verses that we would have to learn, or they memorized, or something like that. And that was the public school. And so they've gotten rid of the creation. You can't teach creation. Everything is now about evolution. And it's a strange thing, my personal opinion. We have freedom of religion. And during this time frame in our country, they were turning it into freedom from religion. Don't talk about God, don't quote the Bible, don't pray, don't give any demonstration of your religion because it might offend somebody. Well, we have the right to offend people. We can't beat them up, we can't physically assault them, but we have freedom of speech. And that gives us the right to say what's on our mind in a proper, civilized manner. And that's all right. So we do have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. I had a very creative third grade teacher. Now, he could not teach us creation. So after we had done the whole, it's always called the science program in the elementary school. You have math, science, reading, all that. So this was a science portion, and they had just taught us all about evolution. So he would stop and he would ask a question. He says, okay, this is all about evolution. Does anyone here have a different belief on how we got here? And one of my classmates, I think his name was David. I can't believe I remember that this far. But he went to church, right? And that was a weird thing. Back then, you went to school and you went to church together. Right. And so everybody that was at my church was at my school in the classes with us. And so he says, well, I thought God made everything. And the teacher's going, that's interesting. Explain it to us. The teacher could not do that, but he could let a student take over and teach it for him. So he was very creative. So he made an interesting observation. This has been with me for many, 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 many years. No one knows what actually happened because there are no witnesses present when it happened. Well, I hate to pick on my teacher, but he was wrong. There was one witness, and that was God. Now, I have an interesting approach to the Bible. I don't look at this as a book of religion. I look at this as a legal document. And having spent 45 years in an insurance industry that dealt exclusively with contract law, and I've had to litigate law, this is a legal document. Now, I'm not an attorney. I had a unique career where you didn't have to be an attorney to litigate in front of our court system for my industry. And so, this is a contract that was basically between God and man. And when I approach the Bible, I approach it the way I approached the law that I used to litigate. I take it apart, and every word, every phrase, and every provision has to be accounted for. If you have not accounted for every word and every phrase and every provision, you are not ready to go to trial, and you are not ready to teach. Because if you don't take account, you end up teaching something incorrectly. And there was a very prominent minister, and I will not mention names so I don't cause any trouble. He had one small problem. He believed that Israel was represented by the fig tree in the Bible. And no, Israel is represented by the olive tree. But because he believed Israel was the fig tree, he misapplied a very important prophecy by Jesus. Jesus says, when you see the fig tree put forth its buds, the generation that sees that is going to see the end times and everything coming true. So he was believing that Israel was the fig tree. And he went to 1948, May 1948, Israel becomes a nation in one day. And he taught that that is the fig tree putting forth its branches. So the generation that sees that is going to be the generation that sees the rapture and the tribulation and the second coming. And he was not intentionally setting dates. But he's going like, well, a generation is 20 years. And then, well, okay, a generation is 40 years. And then it's like, well, okay, a generation is 50 years. And he was trying very hard not to set a date. Well, in Genesis we find God establishes a generation as 100 years. He tells Abraham, the Jews, the children of Israel, are going to be in Egypt for 4 generations. And they were there for 400 years. So he passed before we get to the 100-year mark. But again, because he did not understand the proper significance of that symbol, he was messing up. The fig tree represents religion, not Israel. Adam and Eve, when they had fallen and were in sin, the physical evidence of their sin was nakedness. So they went to the fig tree and they picked the leaves and they sewed them together and they made aprons. So the fig tree is our religion. It is our effort to cover our sin, and it is our effort to make ourselves acceptable to God. Well, right now, the religion of Israel is putting forth its buds. The religion of Israel, they have a group over there called the Temple Mount Institute, or the Temple Mount Faithful. And they have recreated the menorah, the golden candlestick. Oh, I just have to brag, I'm sorry. We were there in 2006 in Israel. And we went to the Temple Mount Institute. And they're talking about this, they're getting it ready, and they go, we are remaking the menorah. And she picked up this golden, actual gold sphere. She goes, here. And she handed it to me. And I am holding part of the globe that made up the menorah. I think they've taken my fingerprints off since then. But I was holding the new menorah. Wow. They have since assembled it, and it's now on permanent display at the western wall. They've done the table of showbread. They've done the altar of incense. They've discovered that there is a genetic marker in the tribe of Levi, and they can find all of the priests that they have started training. They have recreated the high priest garments. The idea is that they had trouble making these garments because they couldn't find the right dyes. And lo and behold, this one bug that had been extinct for 2,000 years suddenly pops up, the bloodworm. And the bloodworm is a picture of Jesus. It attaches itself to wood. It sheds its blood as it's giving birth to its young. Now, it's not really shedding its birth, but it's giving off a red dye, so it looks like that. So that is a picture of Jesus. And in Psalms 22, Jesus on the cross says, I am a worm and not a man. They are making reference to the blood worm. And that is the stain, the dye they used for the red dye in the priest's garments. They couldn't find the blue dye. That one was hidden. It wasn't extinct, but these snails have this gland. And if you take the liquid out of that gland and put it out in the sun, it turns blue. And that is the blue dye. And they just discovered that about 30 or 40 years ago. So the religion of Israel is putting forth its buds. We are the generation. I'm not going to say how long one is. I'm not getting into the same problem he was in. God can make it as long as he wants. And I don't know exactly when we have enough of the religion of Israel to justify it as putting forth its buds and the prophecy kicks in and starts moving. So I'm playing it safe. So again, it is important that you do your homework, that you know how to take something apart, every word, every phrase, and every provision, so you know exactly what it says and what it's teaching. So, the first 2 chapters of Genesis, I see it as God being on the witness stand. I am a writer, and I have books, and I have copyrights. And so I might be sitting in the witness stand someday, and somebody says, oh, you didn't write this. You don't own the copyright. And I'll go, excuse me, on this date, I did this. On this date, I talked to Kay. On this date, Kay and I read the book. On this date, I told my daughter, hey, look at this. And I can document point by point personal information that was going on as to what I did, when I did it, and how I did it. So this is God sitting on the witness stand in a copyright courtroom saying, this is how I did it. I can prove I did it. And now, it's interesting, we're getting smart enough to start seeing that what he said was true. There is proof for this. There was a book that was out many years ago called Science Speaks. It's out of print, but if you go to Amazon, or if you go to A as in Adam, B as in book, E as in Edward, abe.com, this is a link, I'm going to get in trouble for this, to every used bookstore in America and Canada and England. If you can't find a book because it's out of print, that's the place to go. Unfortunately, it was $146 when I checked it the other day doing the PowerPoint. It's out of print, but it's very, very popular. I have 3 copies. I may break down and sell one. I don't know. So, he's making the comment that he can tell you and he can prove to you that he built the house, using the analogy of God building the house. He says, I can tell you that when I was making the foundation, I dropped 3 nails in the southeast corner. So you can get your scanning device, or you can get your jackhammer, and take the corner apart and find those 3 nails, and that'll prove to you that I made it. And that is what God has done. He has put things into the creation that will prove to you He made it. So, the creation versus evolution. I love this analogy, this realization. Somebody pointed out that we are both looking at the same evidence, but we're coming up with different conclusions. And so I'm going to do a little bit of talk later on in the lesson about the Grand Canyon. For hundreds of years, it's been 100 years. For hundreds of years, as they're doing this whole thing of evolution, the evolutionists point to the Grand Canyon and says, look, that took millions of years to form. So that proves your, 6,000 year theory is bunk. And they would point to the Grand Canyon. That proves evolution. Or after Mount St. Helens, we're now pointing to the Grand Canyon saying that proves creation. And we've got better proof than they do. It's always nice being on the winning side. So, the evolutionists have been the ones that have been in a position of power for decades. We are scientists. And for some strange reason, we go through this whole process that, okay, we're now in an age of faith, and we have religion. And it's like, oh, that was the Dark Ages. Now we're coming into the age of reason. And now because we have reason, we put away the superstitions. And then it comes back down again, and we start seeing things, and it's like, oh, we have a new revival. And then it comes back, oh no, here's the scientific evidence. Oh no, here's the faith. Oh no, here's the science. And I actually stopped watching Star Trek. Now for some of you, somebody just got their head popped up. What? I saw Star Trek when it was brand new, the original series. And I was watching one of the new series, and there was one line in one of the episodes where I figured, I'm done. And the doctor in that episode said, well, we know that evolution is a fact. And they just moved on. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm trying to find, where can I stop this? And where can I do my rebuttal? And I couldn't stop it. I couldn't do my rebuttal. So it's like, I don't need to keep watching this anymore. So yes, that was a breaking of fellowship. For those that have always known me for being so involved in Star Trek, sideline. If you get the 20th anniversary of Star Trek and you pause at the right point, I am standing there in the black meditation robe that Spock wore with the ears. That's how involved I was. Now we'll move on, and people I've dropped estimation like crazy. So the evolutionists would scream, this is science. And they would teach, these are facts. And with Madalyn Murray O'Hair taking the Bible and the prayer out of the classroom, there was no rebuttal. And so without a rebuttal, people accepted what the scientists were teaching us. And they were saying, this is how it happened. So they've delegated creation to a religion. They say, oh, this is all about faith. And they say, oh, you can't prove this. And basically, if you believe in creation, all you're doing is demonstrating your ignorance. Well, in this class, in this program, I'm hoping to change that message completely. So that's been the position of creation versus evolution. If you believe creation, it just shows how ignorant you are. So, those who believed in creation did so in silence. There was this conspiracy that, yes, I may believe in creation, but I don't dare say anything because I don't want people to think that I'm ignorant. Slowly, those who believed in creation did this campaign to challenge evolution. And they tried to do it without bringing the Bible into it. So they were claiming that this is not faith. This is not religion. This is intelligence. This is logic. And that was the problem, was all they had was logic. They did not have the physical evidence that they needed. But it was logic. And so it was best known as what they call the clock theory. And I mentioned before our class was starting, and this is a spoiler alert for week after next for our second class, there's something called the anthropic principle. And the anthropic principle started in about 1954. And scientists began studying different sciences. And as they studied each science, they discovered that if you took this and tweaked it just a little bit, life would cease to exist. If we were just this much closer to the sun, we would burn up. If we were this much further back, we would freeze. If the earth was this much bigger, we'd be crushed. If it was this much smaller, we couldn't hold the atmosphere. If you changed this amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, the sun can't get through. If you change it the other way, too much gets through and we die. And it goes all the way down to the atomic level, that if you change anything about the structure of the atom, we would cease to exist. And so the anthropic principle literally teaches we are here, and this world was created and designed to maintain life, human life. And that is driving them crazy. Well, that is the clock theory. This is too precise. Everything fits together. It's all part of a system or a mechanism. So the clock theory. So if you go out walking and you stumble across a field, and in the middle of the field you find a clock sitting there, this suggests that there had to be somebody who made the clock. No religion, no Bible, simple logic. And I love how the evolutionist responds. So their counter-strike is saying, there's no clock. Tick, 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 tick. There's no clock. Tick, 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 tick. No, there's no clock. Tick, tick, tick. What's that? That's not a clock. And they keep coming back saying it was all random chance. Like an explosion in a paint factory. And as the paint and the brushes and all the stuff falls down to the ground, they paint the Mona Lisa. Yeah, no clock, no design. So, therefore, since there is no clock, they can claim that there still is no clock maker. So those who believed creation changed their terminology. Okay, let's not call it a clock. Let's call it intelligent design. Yeah, again, no Bible, no religion, no faith. We're looking at this clock sitting in front of us, and somebody made it, and we're going to call it intelligent design. Whew. Evolutionists come back and they say, no. This was not the result of design. This was all a random accident. Now, I should have won the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm sorry, that's just me. I presented a theory, and after I presented it, I found out that somebody presented that theory to the Nobel Peace Prize, and they got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And I came up with this myself. And I called it the benefit of the doubt. And you got this pool of goo with all the right chemicals in it. And I'm going to give the evolutionists the benefit of the doubt that, yes, lightning can strike that pool of goo. And then, well, okay, yes, lightning can strike the pool of goo, and you can bring life from non-life. I'll give you those benefits. I'm being more than generous. And I point out, but of course, as soon as that happens, the life is going to boop, die because it's in toxic waste. Well, okay, I'll give you another chance. Lightning, pool of goo, zap, new life, new improved life. And this one can survive the toxic environment. Okay. And then it dies. It can't breathe. It suffocates. So we have to get this new zap, new goo, new life, life 2.0. This life can inhale, but it can't exhale. It's dead. Zap, 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 zap. And we get it where it can breathe and exhale. We get it where it can eat and remove the waste. We get it for the fact that it can move and find new food and new water. And finally, we're at life 20.0. And it's perfect. We gave you the benefit of the doubt. There you go. And it lives a normal, healthy life. But then it dies. Oh, we forgot reproduction. So it's one generation of life and it's gone. And there was a scientist that put this together and came up with the idea that even if you had millions of years and hundreds of thousands of chances, there was not enough time to create life like we know it. So he made the same conclusion I did, that evolution just can't work. But here's why he got the Nobel Prize. He did this and says, so tell you what, instead of millions of years old, let's make it billions. No evidence, no proof, just I need more time, so we'll create billions of years instead of millions. But then here's the kicker. He said, oh, by the way, I'm introducing aliens. Aliens from another world showed up and they made sure we had the life. They were involved in creating our life. Notice I use the word creating. Because what did he do? He took God and exchanged it for aliens. If something is creating life, it's still creation. It's not evolution. So, again, random design, is there enough time? Is there enough information? So the scientific community made their response. This is a very interesting film. I checked, it's on Amazon. Ben Stein, you may know him. And it's called Expelled. And what's really interesting about this is that they introduce Nobel Prize winners, people that are heads of scientific communities, people that are known for their reputation for being great scientists, researchers, thinkers, and they've been published dozens of times. And if they dare to hint at creative design, they are fired, their reputations are shredded, their publication rights are revoked, and they are forced into silence. Now, let me take another quick sidestep, because he did one thing in this that blew me away. He says, if evolution is true, this is where it's going to lead. And he took us to the concentration camps in Germany, Dachau, Auschwitz. If evolution is the reality, then there is no God, there are no human rights, and somebody is justified doing this type of torture to move the race ahead several generations. What does our Declaration of Independence say? All men and women are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. No Creator, no rights, no Declaration of Independence. And so any dictator is totally justified for advancing the race several generations in a giant leap by torturing and euthanizing and killing people that they don't think should be in the gene pool. That basically made that whole video open up to me. Be careful what you're pushing for. If you believe in evolution, you can't pick and choose. It has to be the whole image. So those who taught intelligent designs were censored, they were terminated, They were ridiculed, and their careers and reputations were destroyed. No one would give intelligent design a platform. This was the big battle cry for the longest time. Let's sit down and let's debate this. I'll bring my arguments, you bring your arguments, and in a peaceful environment, we will think together. And I'll show you why I believe this, and you show me why you believe that, and we'll leave it for people to make their own choice. The scientific evolutionists did not want to debate. They did not want to give us a chance to present our evidence. They were trying to keep us in silence. Evolution barricaded the doors, and it survived for several more decades through silence. So, this session is referred to as Mount St. Helens, the eruption that shook the world. And again, it shook the scientific world. This one they can't defeat. This one they can't ignore. It shook the evolutionist world, and they still can't put it back together. So they hope you just don't know this. Well, let me move you forward. Something happened in that eruption that the evolutionists could not silence. And now it's no longer something that they can just ignore. We have a gentleman named Rick Oliver. He's a PhD. I met this gentleman when we were in our old church building on Kitching. They brought him in one Saturday, and he did us an entire presentation on this. So this is where all my information comes from, as I was present when an eyewitness gave his testimony about what happened at Mount St. Helens. Now, I was hoping to have a video to show you. I've got 3 of his videos, and every one of his videos just has his testimony. So I think somewhere online on YouTube, there's probably one that he talks about this. He is the co-founder of a ministry called Confounding the Wise. And this is actually the picture from the YouTube video. That might be the best place to go to get his information. He described himself as an evolutionary biologist. Not just a biologist. His specialty was evolutionary biologist. How the life form evolved from this into this. And he was saying that at 14 years old, he came in and announced to his Christian family and parents, this whole thing about Jesus is a bunch of garbage, and I don't believe the Bible. I think that there was no creation. I think we were evolved at 14 years old. And his arrogance only got worse. He says he used to have the creationists in his class for lunch. He saw it as his personal obligation to destroy any faith that his Christian students had. And he admitted that he would even give his Christian students a lower grade just because they believed. So, evolution was his religion. And he was a very faithful follower, and he did not doubt. He did not question. He accepted everything that was said because he knew evolution was correct. So, Dr. Oliver was part of a scientific team that was assigned to monitor Mount St. Helens. Now, I'm going to let you know that there are different types of eruptions. We can go over to Hawaii, and you can watch eruptions taking place right now. The magma comes up and the lava pours out, and you can sit there and watch the lava, get out your marshmallows and hot dogs and help yourself if you stay far enough back.
Yeah.
And, you can see an eruption taking place. Mount St. Helens was different. Mount St. Helens did not go up. It went out. And that was something they were not counting on. So, they set up a base camp where they could record everything that was happening in the mountain. May 17th, 1980, they decided that they needed to take a break. They'd been at it for a long time. So they left one member behind to monitor the mountain. They all got on the plane and they flew to Las Vegas for the evening to have real beds, real food, and a real shower. Need the break. May 17th. Along comes May 18th. In the morning, they are flying back to the base camp. They get a call on their radio from the member they left behind at the base camp. And he said, Mount St. Helens is. And then the radio went dead. Mount St. Helens had erupted, and a pyroclastic cloud took out the entire camp and killed their lone member. Now, this is not the camp. This is a picture I got. But you can see, RVs and stuff like that. This cloud, that's not the forest. That's a cloud. That cloud is coming at you at over 150 miles per hour.
Wow.
So if you can't run 150 miles an hour, yeah.
What's the temperature?
And the temperature is about 400 to 500 degrees. When this hit,
Oh my gosh.
it just shredded things and melted things and destroyed things. All these trees along here had all the leaves and all the bark ripped away instantly.
Was there a movie made about that?
I don't think so. They do have,
Documentary.
what's the,
Documentary?
Pierce Brosnan was in?
yeah, Dante's Peak.
Yeah, that's the speak.
That's right. I know it was something.
Dante's Peak is a really good one.
That's a good one.
I also like Volcano with
That's good too.
Tommy Lee Jones. Of course, they're fighting the lava
Yeah.
about from here to there. You can't get anywhere close to that with the type of heat
it's
you're
too
talking
hot.
about. But you have to allow for something.
Hollywood.
Now, I think Dante's Peak did a really good job of
That's-
I know it
showing.
was something. I remember.
Very impressive.
That's great.
Yeah, those are still available at Amazon if you need to buy
Of course,
them.
everything's on Amazon.
Make sure you get popcorn. So the lone member of the team was killed instantly. Had the team stayed, all of them would have died that morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a real eye-opener. How close did you come to death? Pretty intense. So on May 18th, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. It erupted at 8:27, and at that time it took a 400-foot bulge of land on the side of Mount St. Helens, and it basically began to push it out. And about the same time, there was a 5.1 earthquake that triggered the eruption, and the eruption lasted for 9 hours. A lot of damage, a lot of devastation. So that is why this eruption is different than the ones we see over on Hawaii. This is what we refer to as a massive geological event. The others are geological events. This one was massive. So here is Mount St. Helens, pre-eruption. It is a volcano. It had erupted back in like 1827 or something like that. And then here we go. Mount St. Helens, 10 seconds, 42 seconds, 52 seconds,
Right off the side.
60 seconds. 1 minute. And it blew a quarter of the mountain away. That is a lot of power, a lot of energy to move that much matter and mass that quickly and that far. So here is another picture of the eruption. Here is it coming up. Here is the lava. And here's the end result. Wow. Notice something missing. The whole side of the mountain. So there is the pre-eruption. There is your post-eruption. Whew. The team has set up a new base, and they studied the aftermath of the eruption. Now, all the eyes of the world are on this event. You can't put it behind a curtain and say, ignore the man behind the curtain. This is center stage, and all the news agencies are broadcasting and filming and airing this as it happens. Every family in the world has an opportunity to see this on their television. Before cell phones, before computers, but your TV had it. And the findings shook the evolutionary world to its core. Evolutionists had held onto a concept called uniformitarianism. And what that means in simple everyday terminology means that everything is uniform. Everything remains the same. Nothing changes. This is the way that it has always been. This is the way it is right now. And this is the way that it is going to be forever. And if you look at our ecology, that looks like that's the case. We're not seeing all these crazy things happening. So the evolutionists, they only survive because they say things never change. So I can look at the Grand Canyon today, and the Grand Canyon is stable. And the Grand Canyon has a river running down it. Is that the Colorado River? Okay. I've never been. So
Yeah.
Colorado River. And the Colorado River is at the bottom of the canyon. So that means that at one time it was up here and just slowly dug away the dirt, dug away the rock, and got lower and lower and lower and lower till it's at the bottom. And that's why they would point to the Grand Canyon and say, that proves evolution. This is what's happening. This is what has always happened. Nothing different. And it's going to stay this way. So I can point to the Grand Canyon and say, this is millions of years old. And that one statement destroys creation. We're claiming it's 6,000 years ago when this happened. No. Even if that was just 1,000,000 years doing that, it blows us out of the water. And the evolutionists would say, here is physical evidence, documented proof that we are more than 6,000 years old. And that was the core of their entire position. So, the Grand Canyon is a result of millions of years of slow erosion by a river running through the canyon. And again, the billions of year model. Mount St. Helens eruption created a new concept, the major geological event model. Many things we believe were the result of a slow process were the results of major geological events. The eruption involved 3.3 billion cubic yards. That is a massive piece of dirt to move. They said that it was generating as much force as 33 of the Hiroshima bombs. The speed of the blast exceeded 150 miles. And the big thing is that 1/4 of the debris landed in Spirit Lake. When it hit, it created a tidal wave of 860 feet wave that went to the other side of the lake's shore. Wow. Now, one of the interesting things is that when it blew off to the side, it literally picked up an entire forest growing on its side, and that's now at the bottom of Spirit Lake. And they're learning all kinds of interesting things because of that forest. Spirit Lake near Mount St. Helens now has petrified trees at the bottom. The blast took the regular forest and turned it into petrified wood. Now, Dr. Oliver was saying, I was trying to find a picture, I was trying to find some other reference. All I got is him. And he says that when they were there, they found a tree trunk. This part of the tree trunk was regular wood. The center was coal, and this end was petrified wood. It was the blast, the intense heat that changed all these things. And so now people are going over to Spirit Lake, they're going down scuba diving, and they're checking into the whole idea of the petrified wood that is there. Now, I was at the petrified forest way back from New Mexico when I was just out of high school. And they had the sign there saying, this is a result of 50 million years. It took 50 million years to form this forest. I can testify to that sign. I wish I had taken a picture. I may have some, but I couldn't. And I spent an hour and a half online trying to find a copy of that sign. It does not exist, and I'll tell you why. They had rocks that they watched form from the eruption. And they were testing these rocks that they knew were days old, and they were coming up as being millions of years old based upon the scientific testing. Geology like the Grand Canyon was created on a smaller scale and a much shorter time frame. So the scientific community now has had to seriously consider the Bible's account of major geological events, specifically the flood. And now they're not so adamant that the flood never happened. They're not attributing it to God. They're not attributing it to God, but they're saying, yeah, this is something. We know there's something is there. So geologists have been forced to accept a new theory called actualism. You know, actualism comes from the fact that it actually happened. There was a major geologic event that actually caused what we're finding now recorded in the rocks and in the geology and in the topography and in our ecology. A lot of ologies in there. Geologists discovered quickly how fast the strata layers would form. And they would take you to the Grand Canyon and they'll show you all these stratas, saying, oh, this is back during the time of the dinosaurs. Oh, this is after the dinosaurs. Oh, this is here. And they had it all mapped out as to how far back, millions of years, even billions of years, that these were taking place. So, here we go. The rapid strata formation. May 18th, 1980 was the first eruption. Now notice there's a man standing right there. And so this is stratified layers up to 400 feet tall. May 18th, 1980, this is where we find the first eruption of Mount St. Helens. It erupted 6 months later. A month later, June 12th. And notice all the layers that are here. Each layer is a different piece of ash coming down, a different piece of debris, a different piece of dirt. And when it erupted a month later, it added all those various strata. And then it did erupt 2 years later, March 19th, 1982, and the top of that was formed by all the debris, all of the ash, all the sedimentation that was released by Mount St. Helens. If you look at the wall of the Grand Canyon, it's identical.
Yep.
One of the things that always bothered the scientist is that where's the empty period? And there should be something that is just normal erosion, normal processing, and it should be an empty space showing the passage of time. You can't find the passage of time layers. They're not there because this happened instantly. 3 different eruptions happening instantly, depositing this stuff instantly, and it deposits and it becomes rock, petrified, hard, working that way. So again, these are the rock layers. Didn't take millions of years. A lot of this took place in just 3 hours. Whew. Okay, evolutionists. Explain this one to me. And then here's a picture without all the labels on it, just so you can see the guy there, proper ratio and everything. In the 1982 eruption, it created a copy of the Grand Canyon, 1/40th scale, and this was created in 5 days. This is the actual picture. And this whole thing was carved in just 5 days. Now, one of the things that's happening here is that ice is created. Ice in the middle of a volcano. Yeah, because as the water goes up, it's freezing and it comes back, and you've got ice. And then when the lava hits it, it melts it, turns it to steam, and you have all these different things that were there because of the glacier, because of the ice. And as the ice melts, there's an empty cavity. 5 days to make a small copy of the Grand Canyon. Not millions or billions of years. Now here's some of the petrified wood in the trees. These are trees that are floating on the Spirit Lake, and they're all taking an interesting position. As they're there, the roots are gone. They've been ripped out of the ground. And as they're there, they get heavy in one end, and they turn up this way, and they eventually sink down to the bottom. When they were looking at the petrified forest, they were claiming, oh, this took place over 50 million years, because it's different stratas and different levels. No, it was all still the same major geologic event, the flood, and these all came down at different levels in the sedimentation all around the same time, and they became petrified from the explosion. Now, this is a little web page I took it off of, and it says, around 1900, F.H. Knowlton proposed the theory that the petrified trees on Specimen Ridge were forests petrified in place. This theory has remained the dominant theory through most of the 20th century. A more recent theory proposes the trees were uprooted by volcanic debris flows transported to lower elevations. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens supports this idea. Its mud flows transported trees to lower elevations, depositing some trees upright, similar to what you see at the Specimen Ridge with their petrified forest there. See, when you have an actual visual demonstration, it's easy to figure out what happened. And as long as the evolutionists did not have a visual demonstration for us to point to, they got away with murder. But now we know it doesn't work that way. So here, Yellowstone's fossil forests are unique. They are the world's most extensive 40 square miles. They contain the greatest variety of plants, over 100 species. Many stumps still stand upright in the same sites where they grew millions of years ago. Now, I just have to find this humorous. I want to show you what the creationists have done to deal with this. Petrified forest, subtropical Yellowstone. This petrified redwood is a clue to a warmer, damper, more violent Yellowstone landscape. Anatomically, the trunk is indistinguishable from the present-day redwoods in California. Okay, that's good. When a chain of volcanoes erupted here in Eocene times 50 million years ago. See, they couldn't make them 50 years in the making. They were instantaneous, so they moved the volcanic eruption 50 million years ago to keep their evolution theory alive. That is not how it works. They can't prove that there were eruptions 50 million years ago. They triggered massive landslides into mountains and valley streams. The rolling mix of ash, water, and sand buried whole forests. Before the trees could rot, abundant silica and the volcanic flow plugged living cells, creating forests of stone. They can't say it took 50 million years to form the petrified forest. So they're saying that it was formed like you're seeing it today at Mount St. Helens, but it happened 50 million years ago. That is their mentality. There's something we're going to hit on later, but they've discovered something that's freaking people out. And Dr. Oliver talked about this. This one archaeologist. She had dug up a dinosaur thigh bone, a T-Rex. Nice big, thick T-bone. Somehow, this got broken. And inside the fossil was viable bone marrow tissue.
I remember that, yeah.
Freaks you out.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally ostracized her. They shredded her reputation. They removed all of her publications to silence her.
Proof right there.
Physical proof. And they're saying, no, you had to fake this. You had to do something to it.
Same.
The longest that tissue can survive is 5,000 years. And so what they're doing now is they're claiming that somehow this happened 65 million years ago, and because it was fossilized, it preserved the tissue inside. They can't look at the facts and accept them.
That was proof.
So there's been a problem with dating the rocks. Normally they would be watching the rock actually come down, they'd watch it cool, they'd watch it form, and they would send it off to the lab for what's called a potassium-argon dating method. And they're measuring the potassium and the argon in the rock, and basically this is to verify the dates. So here, this is one of the screens we dealt. Present day dome grew from 1980 to 1986, blew off, measured 876 feet high. They were dating the stuff using potassium-argon method, and certain minerals dated to 350,000 years old, and the rocks were coming up at 2.4 million years old. So this one, we were looking at it, and these are different eruptions that they know they were there. The Halilea basalt eruption, which is in Hawaii, was 200 years ago. When they measured the rocks, they were measured at 600,000 years old. You had Mount Etna, erupted 2,100 years ago. It's measuring at 25 million years. You had another one that erupted 29 years ago. They're measuring at 35 million years. You have the Mount Lassen, took place 85 years ago. It measures at 11 million years. The Sunset Crater, 950 years ago, was the eruption. It's 27 million years old when they measured the rocks. Wow. And just a few more here. Kailua, Hawaii, again 200 years. This one was 1,000 years, 43 million. Again, Hawaii, 1,000 years, 30 million. Another one, 40 years ago, 8.5 million years old. And then Mount Stromboli, 38 years, measures at 2.4 million years old. They know the date of the rock. That can't be disputed. There's documentation as to when it was formed based upon the eruption. And when they're testing it, it's coming up with some of the craziest dates based upon the potassium and argon in them. So, if radioisotope, there we go, look at my tongue working, methods give incorrect ages based on the rock's known age. How can they be trusted to date rocks of unknown? This is the Grand Canyon. And they're claiming the Grand Canyon is millions and millions of years old. But again, the same dating method has been proven false in every volcanic eruption. So, what have we learned? Geological features observed forming rapidly. We had quickly forming strata, we had quick erosion, and we had petrified forests. Geology often demands rapid formation. So you have the polystrate fossils, again, which is the idea of the petrified forests and the strata, and the fact that the missing time is just not there. The layers that show that time passed naturally. And then the radioisotope ages are suspect, so you can't use those as a reliable piece of documentation. No uniformitarianism. Rapid strata, rapid erosion, rapid deposition of logs, rapid slab growth, rapid glacier formation, rapid recovery from the ecosystem. Right now, Mount St. Helens looks pretty good. All that ash is a good fertilizer. Came back very well.
Very well.
The rapid lava cooling makes rocks with the potassium archon appear millions of years old, when we know from personal fact that's not the case. Suddenly, everything that evolutionists pointed to as proof of a long, slow process covering millions of years was proven to have happened quickly. Finally, there are witnesses to the process. We saw and filmed and documented how a major geologic event created in days what evolutionists keep insisting took millions of years. So this is the opening scene in the documentary Is Genesis History? The Grand Canyon records the quick stratiformation of the flood similar to Mount St. Helens. So what does this mean for us? It forces all parties looking at the same evidence to now come to the same conclusion. There's no more ambiguity. There's nothing they can introduce and argue. So what are we looking at does not support a billions-of-year-old philosophy. The evolutionists continue to cling to their religion, because if evolution does not work, and we are not billions of years old, the only other explanation is creation. Some evolutionists are beginning to accept creation, but they will not accept it was God. Again, the billions of years and aliens came down and helped us. So that's going to be our topic next time we meet again, not next week, but the week after. I'll be in Visalia next week for a memorial. We're going to be looking at the anthropic principle, and we're going to be looking at something called Borel's law. Scientists say that given enough time, anything is possible. We agree. But anthropic principle and Borel's law says you don't have unlimited time. You have 6,000 years. And it doesn't work in 6,000 years. Okay, do we have any questions before we shut it all down? Wow, you're all asleep?
No.
Are you all that educated now?
Yeah.
Oh, back.
No question, I just want to say this was wonderful.
Mhm.
I really love this.
Oh,
Thank
oh,
you.
praise the Lord. It's him, not me.
Yes, I know, but it's wonderful. Thank you for putting it all together.
And we're going to do this for each of the different topics. The Is Genesis History went to different scientific fields, and they were discussing all of this from different directions. The problem was when they started with the Grand Canyon, nobody had explained this. And it left everybody sitting there scratching their head like, what's that all about? So hopefully we can take away all the confusion at each of these levels of the scientific evidence that is there. Okay, well, I'm going to close it down, and those that need to leave can leave. We still have food over here, so help yourself. And we'll have a closing prayer, and I'll hang around for any discussions you might have. Heavenly Father, thank you for this information. Father, help us to be able to see that this is all you're doing, Father. You are in charge, you are in control, and you know exactly what happened. And now we can come to your word with a confidence that, yes, this is how you did it. You're the one who did it, and it all comes together, and it is not ignorance. It is not blind faith. It is intelligence, and it is your intelligent design. Now be with us as we go home for this week. Watch over us, keep us safe, and bring us safely back. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.
This is the fun part. Nope. You got to catch the button just